All right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to all that are present today. Yeah, my name is Dahlia, and I am accompanying Encik Muhammad Faizal Datuk Muhammad Din, the Regional Managing Partner of Grid International Malaysia. So before we begin with the talk or the sharing today, I would like to, introduce Cik Faizal a little bit. So Cik Faizal was inducted as a partner in 2011, yeah, and is currently leading Grid International Malaysia's office, which was established in 1981, covering engagements in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Brunei, and Papua New Guinea. He graduated from the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, Australia, with a Bachelor in Business Management majoring in International Management. And then he proceeded to obtain a Master of Commerce and a Master of Business Administration. 2 masters, huh? Why not a PhD then, Cik Faizal?
Next on the list.
Okay. He is also currently a member of the International Society for Organizational Development, United States of America. So since the beginning of his career with Grid International in 2005, Cik Faizal has designed and implemented engagements for numerous organizations in both the public and private sectors in supporting their strategic change initiatives. He has also coached in organization department heads to serve as internal grid consultants to ensure culture development initiatives are sustained within the organization. Furthermore, USM or University Science Malaysia has appointed him to be one of their CEOs in residence, in which he gives talks to students and lecturers on a variety of subjects related to corporate culture and jointly conducted research work in organizational development. And sometimes he frequently also gives talks to the Singapore University of Social Sciences. I guess we are fortunate today to be able to listen to him. Without further ado, I pass the baton to you, Cik Faizal, all yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dahlia. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to everyone tuning in and viewing today. And thank you very much, Dr. Dahlia, for a great introduction, because I did mention to her, I don't like to speak about myself, so that really helps. So, without further ado, I'll be sharing my screen. All right, is my screen visible?
Yes.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen from USM, what you see in front of you was actually...
UPM, Cik Faizal.
Sorry, from UPM. My apologies. Tadi terdengar USM, Dr. Dahlia.
Yeah, I know.
Yes. Yes. What you see in front of you is the original design of Dr. Blake and Newton. Which of the grid framework, which was created during a Monday morning lecture. And all those colors you see are actually chalk. This was done on a blackboard back in the 50s, if I'm not mistaken. So all those various colors, so we have transferred it into an artwork, so to speak. So that's what you see in front of you. All right, so just to share a bit about who we are on an international level. So as you may or may not know, the Grid International or Grid Organization Development Framework was pioneered and founded by 2 behavioral psychologists, Drs. Robert Blake and Dr. Jane S. Newton. So this partnership stemmed across decades, and interesting fact, they actually spent 10 years of their time doing research on the grid framework before bringing it to market. And that was in, yes, 1950 and 1960 we were established. So a long period of time. But of course, across the years and over the years, we have updated the framework to include new findings from our work on the ground across the globe. And the grid framework has been, or the grid organization development culture change process has been implemented by some companies in the Fortune 500. And to date, truthfully speaking, we have lost count of the number of individuals who've benefited from the grid worldwide, but we have estimated it to be well in the millions, above 10 millions actually, over the years. And through Blake and Newton's illustrious career. They have, their work has been cited in the Harvard Business Review countless of times and they have written, co-authored 135 books, as well as 460 professional journal articles, and has been cited in 219 book chapters. And the various books, just to share with you, ladies and gentlemen, is on the grid. Many of these books also look at the grid applications in various industries. So it is not just a one-size-fits-all, so to speak. They have done work in the healthcare industry, where we have the healthcare grid, as well as the academic grid, specifically designed for academics to bring about culture change and organization development within academic institutions. And lastly, over the years, they have established a network of consultants, and we are operating currently in over 20 countries. And the grid material has been translated into 19 different languages, including Bahasa Malaysia, Mandarin, Arabic for the Middle East, Portuguese for Brazil, and so on and so forth. So then during their career, they came to Malaysia and co-established Grid International in 1981. So for Grid International Malaysia, we've been around for now 41 years. And there you see Doctors Blake and Newton. The lady in blue is Dr. Jane Newton, and the gentleman to the far right is Dr. Blake. And of course, our co-founder, the original founder of Grid International Malaysia is on the far left. And the other gentleman is actually Jane's husband. So,
Cik Faisal?
Yes.
Is there some sound? Not sure what is it mine?
Is it, what's the sound like?
Not sure. Oh, it's okay, never mind. I'm not so sure whether it affects other people or just me.
Oh, should I change my...
Okay, now it's okay.
It's okay? All right.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you. A bit of a technological issues. Glitch. All right. So Grid International Sdn Bhd, founded in 1981. Our headquarters residing in Kuala Lumpur, in World Trade Center, Kuala Lumpur, bangunan Menara Dato' On. Just a disclaimer, we are purely independent and private company, tak ada kaitan with any politics, although our office is there. In the UMNO building. So anyways, so we cover Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, Indonesia, and very recently, in recent years, Papua New Guinea. A lovely place if you haven't been, but also requires quite a bit of care in terms of safety. And since 81, over 80 organizations, I think the exact number currently is 93 organizations within this region has utilized Grid International solutions. And the size of these organizations range from 100 right up to 4,000 plus employees. So typically our engagements for the larger organizations like Maybank, for example, took us about a good 3 to 4 years to complete our full engagement, whereas the smaller organizations can take us, something like 6-7 months to complete. And so down there, as you see, just a non-exhaustive list of our regional clients, big names like Bank Negara. CPL Group there is from Papua New Guinea, Bank Niaga before it became CIMB Niaga in Indonesia, and so on and so forth. So what is Grid, and what does Grid bring about in terms of supporting organizations? So over the years, organizations must always stay ahead of its competitors and being relevant in the market. So there's always a lot of strategic change efforts being initiated, being implemented, new goals, new direction, new leadership. And recent years, you have a very hot topic, digitalization, which is a new way of working. So every time change comes about, it brings about a certain degree of discomfort. It's only human for us to feel discomfort when it comes to bringing about change. And this is where we found that McKinsey found 70% of strategic change efforts fail to achieve its target impact, whereas 30% efforts succeed. And this figure as well was also based on another research that I read by BCG on digitalization, it's the same figure. 70% of digitalization efforts fail to achieve its target impact, whereas 30% efforts succeed. And we do some work with McKinsey in the Middle East. So based on that, we did do some joint research work as to why do organizations fail to achieve its target impact when it comes to change efforts? And a majority that we found is attributed to work culture issues. So just to clarify what we mean, or what I mean by grid, and grid means by culture, we're not talking about corporate values that has been plastered on the walls and discussed at length to come up with your corporate values, the vision, mission. No. Culture simply means to us is how we do things around here. So in relation to that, 30% of these failed organizations failing to achieve the targeted impact, 30% related to operational obstacles. So what we mean by inadequate resources, poor processes, lack in an unsolid strategy developed as well. So those is what we mean by the operational obstacles. However, 70% is related to work culture issues. So what we found is there's a lot of employee resistance to change at multiple levels. Yelah, depan boss semua, people anggap kepala, we agree boss, kita ikut, we'll achieve the new target set. But in silence, they resist, or not in silence as well. So another form of resistance. The existence of silos that happens, not wanting to work with other divisions, other departments, support not working collaboratively with operational and vice versa. One puts themselves on a pedestal. Lama ke lama becomes a silo mentality, and it becomes very detrimental to organization because it's really wastage of resources because collaboration is not open and smooth. Organizational delusion, what we mean by that is, sometimes you see successful organizations living in the past. And they live in the past and they refuse to change because they had a supernominal 3 years, for example. So over the years, why should we change? We had achieved this award back in 1990. Padahal ini dah 2022 already. But they're still following those same processes because of living in the past. And I've come across quite a few of the organizations facing this, and there's a slow decline in organizational performance because we don't feel it immediately. It slowly kills it away. Lack of cohesiveness, and of course, lastly, low trust levels. As we know, trust is a cornerstone in any operational or functional activity that we carry out, whereby we trust our colleagues, we trust our peers in terms of moving forward, in terms of what has been discussed will be implemented, in terms of sharing across issues, although it may be a bitter pill to swallow, but we are trusting that the other person will look at things objectively. So these are some of the work culture issues that I have listed out here, in terms of why strategic change efforts fail in the 70% of organizations. So that's where GRID comes about, to support organizations to bring about changes in these work culture issues. And how we start off in terms of culture is looking at working relationships. Because as we know, in today's world, no man or no woman is an island. We cannot work one alone anymore. No matter how big or how small an organization. The larger, most definitely you can't. Even as a small organization, we cannot get things done individually. So if you take a typical organization which has 2,000 employees, from what we have found, each individual in organization has an ongoing average working relationship with 15 other people. Could be higher now with this study was done pre-pandemic, pre-lockdown. So maybe it's higher now. And a minimum of 10 interactions per day with regards to face-to-face, phone, email, and e-chat. And interestingly enough, this 10 interactions per day is actually much higher now. Based on some articles that I read, I can't give you exactly where it came from, but I remember reading that the number of interactions, especially during lockdown, has skyrocketed because it becomes much easier to pick up the phone or type in the chat box on Microsoft Teams or whatever platform organizations use. So let's take a minimum of 10 interactions per day. So if we do the maths, that results in 20,000 interactions per day in the organization and 100,000 per week and 5 million per year. So that's how significant working relationships are. And sometimes, sadly, organizations overlook this. And these are all driven through 30,000 relationships, meaning 2,000 multiplied by 15 working relationships with other people. So based on the significance of working relationships, that's where we look at relationships as the key factor to bringing about change, to what we talked about earlier in terms of eliminating silos, minimizing employee resistance, building trust, so on and so forth. That's where we look at the 3 R's. So the 3 R's, you first have R1, which is your resources. Every organization, UPM as well, has your assets. I've been to the campus and I was just telling Dr. Dahlia that beautiful campus, very spacious, very luas, so that's a big asset there. So those hard assets, you have technology process, new technology, which is being deployed in the organization. And with regards to academic institutions, the recognition comes very much into play. Academic offerings that they provide, the systems involved, and the number of staff, not just numbers of staff, but the quality of staff as well plays a big role, which also looks at the soft resources such as the staff's experience, the skill, the passion that they bring into the organization, the energy coming into the organization, coming to work, logging on, the openness to change, accountability, motivation, enthusiasm. So any organization that invests in resources expects output, which is where we look at results, the R3. So in the case of academic institutions, ranking is a very important cornerstone of results, where we stand on the global level, the research findings and publications involved, the number of new enrollments every year, is it increasing, which leads to more funding, which leads to increase in revenue, and also cost optimization. Sometimes that's also that is also overlooked. How do we optimize costs so that we can improve profits? Just to share with you one previous case, one previous organization that I did pre-pandemic. So it was a development organization, a property development organization. So there was one project team that went through the grid along with others, but this one particular project team that came to us 6 months after, because we do a lot of reviews after our workshops, seminars, etc. And they said the grid helped integrate the project team's resources, members in the project team. They were more open during the discussions. A team culture of candor was established. And as a result, they had saved 80 million ringgit. 80 million ringgit from one of their projects. So what did I do? I immediately called the CEO and said, I told him, I said, sir, I think I severely undercharge you for my services. Just a joke, I didn't do that. But yes, cost optimization is very, very important as well. And then you look at growth as one of the key result areas, service quality, image, reputation, awards, and of course, right now, attracting the right talent, which is a very important subject in across all industries, with people resigning, with the people jumping around jobs. So wanting to attract the right talent in organizations now is a very, very much a big challenge facing leaders across the globe, not just in Malaysia. So in between the process of translating resources into results every day, day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, and year on year, we have to work with one another, as I said. We have to work with them. That's something that we cannot escape. No matter how much we try to hide, we still have to see someone's face every day. So that's where we look at the R2 of the 3 Rs, which is the relationships. And this is where grid looks at how, for example, individuals and teams initiate positive change, how inquiry is being made. For example, kadang-kadang ialah in the Asian culture, boss tanya the team, any questions? Tak ada boss, tak ada. Faham. Why? Tapi in the mind tu, there's a lot of questions. The mind is going in overdrive, a lot of questions. Tapi mulut buka, suara tak keluar. You know, the mouth opens, but voice is not coming out. Why? Because if I ask, people will think I'm stupid, I don't know. So better I keep quiet. So what happens after that? We leave the meeting room, we ask our close friend, what was the boss talking about? I don't understand what he needs us to do. Our friend pun, I also tak faham. So what happens? The blind leads the blind. And then you wait for the results to come up. Oh, terrible result. And then you have to review semua. So how we make inquiry, how we critique. CRITIQUE, different than CRITIC. So critique is looking at giving feedback for the purpose of strengthening or developing certain areas in terms of the person or the team's work, results, etc. So critique is providing that feedback for the purpose of improvement. However, like even more so in the Malaysian culture, critique, we cannot. You know, we better not give feedback because nanti if I give feedback, the listener tarik muka, merajuk, and even more so if we're close to the individual. You know, we go out for lunch with the individual every day. So if I give feedback to him or her, I'll be having lunch alone for a week. So better I keep quiet. And it goes both ways. How do I receive critique? How do I look at it objectively? So critique is a very important tool to bringing about change and ensuring that individuals and teams stay on the course towards reaching the new target, reaching the new goal. And also critique comes in many forms. You know, yes, sometimes a very authoritative or aggressive individual can give critique in a very aggressive manner, pointing out only flaws. For example, you know, Faisal, this is terrible, do it again. You know, do what again? You know, maybe it's a 5-page report. So the individual has to do the entire 5-page report again, padahalnya is only the opening paragraph needs to be changed. So it's not specific for improvement. And also sometimes critique comes in a form of humor. You know, oh Faisal, why are you so quiet today in the discussion? You didn't have breakfast? Everyone laughs. That's it. But me, I don't take it as a feedback. I just take it as a joke. So nothing changes. So critique comes in many forms, and it's looking at how we provide a critique objectively to bring about positive change towards the goal that we have set out to do as a team. And then how we advocate and express ourselves in meetings as well. In many organizations, even more so, I would have to say in the Malaysian organizations, you have what I like to call secondary or follow-up meeting. You know, in a particular meeting, and I've seen this with my own eyes many times, and of course provide intervention to bring about change in that. But you have a meeting and a discussion, time is allocated to go through specific points in the agenda. However, many times the boss is only the one speaking. Lain semua diam, although they have a lot of areas, a lot of value to bring to the table. For whatever reason, it could be an individual value, or it could be the environment of the team that limits or inhibits people to advocate and express themselves with conviction openly. So what happens is after they leave the meeting, then they will start to discuss with their peers. I don't agree with the boss. I think the boss should do this. Maybe we can do things differently, but it's not heard by all. However, if that is being brought into the meeting room, it could provide so much more benefit, and everyone gets on the same page. Sometimes as well, bosses as well advocate in a very authoritative manner to bring, which creates an environment that doesn't allow others to speak. And how we make decisions, extremely important. especially, I wouldn't say as a leader, but at every level, yes, decisions need to be made. And the higher up you go in an organization, the decision impacts the organizations more greatly. And I have another case in the past where I had this general manager who was very much a people pleaser. So whenever he made decisions in his divisional meeting, he would always give at least 2 to 3 different options for a decision that he makes. So yeah, we should do this, but also we could do that. Perhaps we could look into this. So what happens is the team, his intention is that he doesn't want to be too hard on his team, but that's his intention. But his action of making the decision confuses the team. This was shared amongst the general manager and the team after going through the grid. And his right-hand man said, before the grid, that's what he did. And as a result, me and the team have to work on 3 decisions every time. And so one outcome, but three times the work. But after the grid, he understood that the impact of it. So he's firm on one decision, making a decision, and it makes the job of the division and the departmental heads who reports to division heads, the divisional head, the GM, makes it much easier for them to roll out that decision. And of course, then you look at how individuals resolve conflict. Oh, when we hear conflict too, such a big, harsh word. What we mean by conflict is just differences of opinion, differences of view. So how do we resolve that? So, many times I hear organizations, we want our organization to have a conflict-free environment. Forget it, tell them. Forget it. And any consultant that tells you we'll make a conflict-free environment is lying to you. And having a conflict-free environment will definitely bring about a negative impact on the organization, because when you have conflict and we resolve it objectively, openly, based on what is right, not who is right, that's when you have an interchange of ideas, giving birth to a new way, giving birth to creativity, innovation, because we are challenging one another. However, we're resolving it objectively based on what is right and what is best for the organization and the results that we are trying to achieve. So that's how we look at resolving conflict. Or do we look at resolving conflict by virtue of suppressing conflict? And there's many ways of suppressing conflict by virtue of looking at using my authority or level in an organization to suppress the conflict and move on, or using humor as well, as I mentioned, to look at resolving conflict as well. But when you have these unsound ways of resolving conflict based on who is right, based on trying to smooth over and harmonize the team, when that happens, conflict too, timbul. It's not being resolved, it's still there, it's going to come again. So lama ke lama, it builds up, timbul, and you have a silo, be it on an individual level or on a departmental level or team level, whatever have you. And I've seen this as well, where I was doing for a financial institution, and it was for a branch. Branch pun is not that big. Branches, you're talking about minimum 12, maximum 24, maybe 30 people. However, even in the branch, you have silos. You'd be surprised in some banks, you see. So this particular branch, the branch manager and the assistant branch manager have not been speaking to each other for years. For years, they don't speak to each other. So how is the branch going to move when you have your number 1 and number 2 not talking to each other? And during our engagement, they confronted it. They surfaced the conflict, and they confronted as to why do they not talk to each other. And you'd be interesting to find out that they don't even remember what's the root cause. I look at her face, I already don't like her. But I don't know why I don't like her. So, but it's too long ago. And, starting from zero again, resolving that conflict and moving forward. And of course, that branch brought about a lot of, increased their results, etc., because the team is able to work together as well. There was another organization where the managing director and the chairman were not talking to each other, even worse. And it was for a shipping company with, I think, about 1,200 staff. So can you imagine 1,200 staff, the chairman and MD are not talking to each other. And it was so intense, their conflict, that during a board meeting, if the chairman or MD had a question to the other person who's presenting, katakanlah, the managing director is presenting to the board, the chairman has a question, the chairman won't ask. The chairman would call his special officer and tell the special officer to ask the question to the managing director special officer and then pass the message in that sense. However, during the engagement, they resolved their conflict. And one action that they took is that they said to each other, okay, before Friday prayers, let's go to Friday prayers together every week. But before Friday prayers, let's leave half an hour earlier and have a cup of teh tarik together to build that one-to-one relationship they have. And the entire organization was shaking because for so long, these two are not talking to each other and they're both walking out the main door together, getting into the same car. And of course, lastly, is how we learn from experiences. What we mean by experiences is both success and failure. Kadang-kadang, yalah, failure when we feel down, we didn't achieve our KPI, we merajuk, we're so hard on ourselves, we beat ourselves down, and we have to wait for our peers, our colleagues, or our boss even to pujuk us. Tak apa, Faizal, next year we'll do better. Baru bergerak. So lama-lama, yalah, boss punya kerja just to pujuk je, rather than learning as to why that individual didn't achieve the KPI. And of course, learning from success. When we achieve above and beyond our stretch goals here, how did we achieve that? Why did we achieve that this year or this month or this quarter? Looking at that learning areas rather than immediately, all right, we achieve our stretch goals. MD is very happy, let's go out for dinner. But we don't take that as a learning point. So that's another key area in relationships that we look into, learning from experiences. So moving on. In many organizations, we always see different ways of working. From one department to another department, one division to another division, level per level. If you have a big organization with regional offices or international offices, also different ways of working in those various offices geographically. For example, if it's a bank, a branch in Terengganu. I'm from Terengganu, by the way, so I can speak at this with authority. Kalau branch kat Terengganu tu, and this was the branch manager, he said, although we are a branch in Terengganu, we don't have to work, in a very relaxed mode. No. So you have various ways of working in various teams and various teams and departments built upon the platform of relationships. And that's where you see divergence in those arrows there. And having those unsound and variable R2 or relationships, what do you think is the impact on organization results? How much do organizations lose out?
A lot.
What's the percentage? Anyone? You can put in the chat, go or unmute yourself.
Any percentage? You can put in the chat.
Yeah. How much do organizations lose out on unsound relationships?
I mean, personally, I would say about 70%.
70%. All right. So we have 70%. Anyone else?
85, 80, in the chat. Yeah, I mean, it's going to go above 75.
Wow, that's very high. It's going up. Okay. Well, I'll move on. In terms of from our findings, it's a bit lower than that, but close. Organizations lose 2/3, so it's about 66% of their results due to unsound relationships. It's sad. It's sad because there's a lot of potential there. And I can share with you from a holistic standpoint. Dulu, I was doing for one particular bank. I won't be sharing the name of the bank. It's about, it's open to public. It's quite confidential juga. So prior to our intervention, post our intervention and engagements, 1 year after our engagements, and just to share with you, they did not add on any new resources for this particular organization. Very minimal, of a handful of staff, but just to replace. They didn't create new positions, no departments. There's no new products or services. However, it was just purely working in strengthening the relationships and R2 space of teams, departments, and branches of the organization. And as a result, after 1 year, I was looking at their report. Their collective revenue doubled. So it could be higher, 2/3. It doubled just by working more collaboratively. And when we talk about working more collaboratively, it's not just within team, across teams as well. For example, you have non-performing loans as one of a key result area of a bank, and trying to ensure that those loans are collected. And they went so far as much after looking at their working relationship, they went so much as far as, branches helping other branches out. So I remember it was the Ipoh branch and Taiping, Taiping. So there was some portfolios of non-performing loans in Taiping surrounding area, but belonged to Ipoh's branch, because that's where it came. But Taiping branch members will contact Ipoh branch every week to get a status of these people surrounding the Taiping branch, to help go and collect, to help go and visit those individuals that owe money to the banks, and vice versa. But it didn't benefit the Taiping branch at all, because it's not part of the KPI, zero. But they understood that at the end of the day, it's still under the same umbrella. So kalau that bank to fail, they sink with the ship. The ship flies, they fly with the ship. So that was understood, and that was actionalized by those various individuals within the bank. So yes, 2/3 of results are lost due to unsound relationships. This is something that we have found across the years. All right. So next is looking at the power zone. You hear the power to change. Apa power to change? Change apa? So the power to change, we're looking at the power zone. So yes, as we talked about, we have R1. So R1, there are 3 levels within the R1. So first, on an individual level, on a team level, and on an organizational level. And in there, on individual level, you have individuals' attitudes, values, their own individual values, not corporate values, their own individual values and their own beliefs. I have worked for 10 years, 20 years, buat apa I nak ubah, that sort of attitude, that sort of value that they have solidified within their belief system. And then you have, that is then being translated into teams, in terms of how teams, how they work within the team. That is the norm. For example, you come to a meeting, I just joined UPM, so I'm working under Dr. Dahlia. I bring all my files to the meeting. And then someone nudges me, say, Faizal, over here, our norm is we don't bring all these files because we want to have an open discussion, brainstorming session. So that's the norm. That's the norm. So next time, I will then fall into that norm, because that's how it's being done. I'm not going to be alone coming in every week dengan file orang semua bawa, just one book to write down some notes. So that's the norms that we talk about in teams. And of course, the standards of performance, what the team looks at, the standards of performance. For example, back to, I know I talk a lot about banks, but I do a lot of work with banks here in Malaysia. I don't know why. I guess banks banyak duit, right? So they always engage us, and it's a lot very profit driven. So there, one of the particular branches, the standard there is that to achieve the KPI for service waiting time, you go in, you press the button, keluar the receipt semua tu. So there was one particular branch who admitted to me that over the years, they have learned to rig the system. So they know they're allowed to have a system downtime, I think 3 to 5 times a month. So kalau their service waiting time is falling behind, they will unplug it. That's the standard to achieve the KPI, because they're not pushing themselves as a team to actually shorten the service waiting time for the customer. Another one is also to have, another tactic that they use is they have the security guard press banyak kali. So sometimes if you go into a branch and you observe, kenapa security guard tu tekan banyak kali nombor tu tapi tak ada orang pun. But it's so that they call the number, then straight away they can just click the next one. So that shortens the service waiting time. But is that actually achieving the result of the branch? No. But that was the standard of that particular branch. To be complacent and fall into that norm. And lastly, that then all this translates and amalgamates into the organization's corporate culture. So that's what we talk about, the corporate culture. So it's not like we come in, we work entirely on the organization corporate culture. You know, we look at the individuals and teams that make up and contribute and influences the organization's culture. And their individuals and teams become the drivers to bring about change in an organization's corporate culture, because you know it's made up of people. So that's the R2 space, and all those relate to individual, team, and organizations' behaviors influencing their decisions, how decisions are being made. So for example, like I said to you, like I said earlier about the service waiting time, that's a decision. That's a conscious decision made by the branch collectively to ensure they achieve their KPI without budging on their low standards, right? And also corporate culture. You know, if you have a laid-back corporate culture, why do we have to achieve 100% all the time, all these years, and 60% of KPI achieved? We are still surviving. So let's all just achieve 60%. Board of directors tanya, tak apa, you know, we'll defend it. So that sort of behavior also leads to influencing those decisions, which ends up coming to, yes, those decisions brings about results, sound or unsound results. So we don't look at, you know, the grid doesn't look at changing individuals. We don't look at shifting teams around, restructuring organization, no. But or looking at the R3 space, we don't look at that in terms of changing, you know, what KPIs, strategy, no. That's where we look at, Grid International looks at the power zone and bringing about a shift in individuals' attitudes, values, and beliefs, the team's norms and standards, and ultimately the organization's corporate culture. So that's where the grid methodology, the grid framework, the grid systematic process of change brings about a change in those areas only, which then influences the behavior and the decision and the output of the individual, team, and organization, which is the R3. Like I shared with you earlier about that particular bank, collective revenue double by just bringing about a change in this power zone. And what the cornerstone, or I would say the essence of all our engagements is looking at the grid framework. Okay, so the grid framework, some of you may know or may not know. I'll just go through with you. So the grid framework is built on 2 axes. You have your x-axis, which is a concern for results, right? Measuring from 1 to 9, the single lowest and the single highest numerical value, all right? And some people may argue, where's 0? 0 means you're dead. And, you know, we're not interested in evaluating dead people. So 1 to 9. So concern for results, that is not static, that's dynamic. You can change that. Concern for results, so katakanlah in a bank, concern for profit, concern for cost, concern for non-performing loans. If you can go into the details of a KPI pun boleh, concern for training. So in the case of an academic institutions, like I mentioned earlier in terms of the results, you know, concern for ranking from a holistic standpoint, concern for research output, concern for quality sample size, if you even bring it down even lower, even more into a micro level, yes. So concern for results can be changed. And then you have the y-axis, also measured 1 to 9, concern for people. That is static. That one cannot be changed. Because in any organization, you have the concern for results and concern for people. Some people argue, okay, tapi what about vets? You know, animal doctors. Shouldn't be concerned for animal? No, concern for animal falls under the x-axis because that's their results, right? So concern for animals and then concern for people is looking at people within the organization. So if it's a vet, concern for nurses, concern for fellow doctors, concern for the support staff, whatever have you. So where each number intersects, that's where we look at what we call a grid style, which is built on the premise of the relationship skills that I shared across earlier. So how people, how individuals, how teams go about actionalizing their relationship skills to initiative, critique, resolving conflict, making decisions. That's where it influences where that particular individual or team or organization falls within this framework. So some might say, yes, but shouldn't you have 81 different styles? I can tell you, I've been doing this for decades already. I can't even remember 81 different styles. So in the wisdom of Blake and Mouton, they had condensed it to look at the most prominent or distinctive styles, which is these 5. These is the original 5 styles that were developed. And it's in the first slide, and you saw all the color too. This was the first style. So first you have 1-1, low concern for people and low concern for results. So very indifferent attitude, tidak apa attitude. Sufficient effort is exerted to meet minimum requirements to avoid attention. You know, I don't want to be under radar, so I will achieve whatever is required. For example, there was one organization, their norm is if you achieve 50% and above, 50 to 80, you are considered safe for your KPI. Okay, kalau you achieve 80 to 100 too, wow, super nominal, CEO will ask, GM will ask, whatever. So anything below 50, then whatever division or department will ask you, the bosses will ask, why are you achieving below? So me being 1-1, I will make sure I will fall at 50%. I won't hit 80% because there's more. I want the minimum requirement and I want to avoid attention. So a 1-1 individual tu, dia in the meeting room, dia duduk kat belakang lah. Yeah, duduk kat belakang, at the corner, playing with his or her phone on Facebook ke, Shopee, Lazada ke, if it's 99, he's on the phone there trying to shop. Tapi I will say 1 or 2 words just to show that I'm engaged. Maybe at the start or maybe at the end, but not in intense discussion. Oh, good morning, boss. Yeah, good weather today. Nothing about results, nothing about the people, but just trying to avoid tension. And I can share with you one particular individual. He was an AVP for an organization, so head of department. So it's a very sad but humbling, and I have to say very motivating story juga. Because this individual, he was in that particular organization for 20 years. And this organization has just distribution facilities, offices regionally. So this particular individual, at the end of the engagement, he made a presentation and said, all my life, I have always worked this way. No one has told me otherwise. I didn't know any better. So during this particular engagement, when I was discussing with my teams would give me feedback. Hey, Abu, for example, his name's not Abu, but Abu, you are always so quiet. You never contribute. You duduk diam je. Bukan you nak tolong tulis on the front ke. You don't ask questions. But you've been with the organization for 20 years. You have a wealth of experience. Why don't you share? So they were very hard on him, but wanting him to be more open, be more candid, be more express himself more, inquire more, and be more dynamic as an individual. But he said, that's how I have been for 20 years. No one has told me otherwise. However, in my organization, I have been moved around from head office to regional center A, regional center B, this office, that department, this division. So I thought I need terror lah. I'm great because division, departments, offices want me, they need me. Henceforth, what I'm doing must be right. Tapi after going through the great engagement, I found that I'm actually 1-1. He himself came to the conclusion that I am 1-1. Why? Because of those values of 1-1, very much synonymous with how I am. If I had known this earlier, I would have made changes immediately and jumped to a more valuable start. And it was sad to know that 20 years, no one told him, no one gave him a strong feedback, and no one supported him to shift it. So 20 years of his life was wasted in his career. He could have gone much further, but interestingly enough, the next week I was doing for another level down below, or he was the head of the AVP, I was doing for senior managers the next week. So he came to give an opening talk to that particular group. So much like a new person, smiling, talking a lot, very enthusiastic, very dynamic. And it was so impressive to see that 180-degree shift just within 1 week, because he had arrived and came to a self-realization that he's 1-1, but he wants to do better. He wants to move. He's not stuck there, and neither is anyone, wherever they may be in the screen framework. So that's I know it's quite a long example of 1-1. So moving on to the next, you have 9-1. 9, or high concern for results and low concern for people. Direct and dominate. Efforts focus on results with low regard for personal impact. So if I asked you for a report today, tapi sebenarnya I actually wanted it yesterday. That sort of thing. You're sick ke, you got COVID ke, I don't care. You log on, you get the work done. So I don't care about the personal impact, I just care about results. And these sort of individuals as well are very highly qualified actually. And however, they really very much so look down on put themselves on a pedestal and look down on their peers and their subordinates as well. For example, a typical behavior is coming to a meeting, they call for half an hour meeting, 10 people of his team comes in, not to discuss on reaching a decision, but he goes in to announce his decision, because he or she knows best. So that's sort of 9-1. And of course, the negative impact of this is low morale, enthusiasm is low, high turnover in a department. I was challenged once by a 9-1 manager and said, I achieve all my KPI. I don't know why I have to be in this training. For what? I said, okay, I tanya soalan senang. You achieve your KPI, great. What is your team's turnover rate? Silence. Okay, fine. Immediately, it's okay. I'll stay for the next few days. So he was very much typical. He came to realization, yeah, maybe I am 9-1, but there are better ways. And then you have 1-9. Low concern for result, but high concern for people. A very accommodating culture to yield and comply. Efforts focus on maintaining relationships with little regard for relationship. So working under a 1-9 boss or in a 1-9 team, it's very, very fun. It's a very fun place to work. For example, a 1-9 individual after Friday prayer supposed to be back in the office, katakanlah 2:30, but he or she comes in at he comes back into the office at 3:30. People don't question why, because they know that he went shopping for kuih muih for everyone, curry puff lah, kuih lah, but on corporate time. That's where you look at low concern for results. Maybe they had an important team meeting, but he wasn't around because he was buying kuih. So when that individual is on leave, people miss him dearly. People miss him dearly because they don't joke, they don't get all those fun, jovial energy that is being brought into the team. But when it comes to quarterly review, monthly review, yearly review, they don't achieve the KPI because it's very stressful, work is not fulfilling. And then you have status quo, balance and compromise, 5-5. So middle concern for results and middle concern for people. Production demands are balanced with employee needs and trends. So the word there is, the nice key word there is trend. So looking at past practice and precedents. Why do we have to initiate new strategy to bring about more funds, more money? For what? Why? We've done ABC 5 years ago. Sama je. You know, things are not going to change. So they always work on what has been done in the past, not realizing that looking at last year's process, last year they were looking at the year before. And if they were to actually, if they had a time machine and travel back in the past to see when that process was developed, it was actually developed 20 years ago. But they never change. They stick on the same strategy. They stick on the same organizational focus. And it's like putting a car in neutral. Tak gerak lah. Tekanlah minyak, however much so, it will not move. And yes, we do see, I do see quite a bit of 5-5 as well, organizations in government sector, in leisure, because it's, bureaucratic in nature as well, which influences how the organizations perform, in a 5-5 way, to balance it, to compromise. Okay, fine, we won't achieve 100% result this year, tapi kalau kita boleh cut our budget sikit sini, tak apalah, I think board directors will be happy. Rather than trying to spend the entire training budget and achieve the KPI. So that's a 5-5 balance and compromise sort of ways of working. And then of course you have 9-9, high concern for results, high concern for people. Because typically people always look at, we can only be 9-1 or 1-9, cannot be both. No. Research and practical applications have shown that there are 9-9 individuals, there are 9-9 organizations, which looks at working in an interdependent way and ensuring people, which builds an environment where people contribute and commit, not comply, but and commit, whereby superior results are achieved through maintaining strong relationships and high standards. So a 9-9 individual in an organization which is not 9-9, the negative impact is that 9-9 individual will be frustrated, can come across as too overbearing pun ada, and may also leave the organization. So there is some negative implication there from a 9-9 individual coming into a 1-1 organization, for example. Nak buat ubah ni, nak ubah tu, tapi the organization is not on the same path, the same direction. So the challenge really, the framework helps individuals and people to see and organizations to also assess where they are today and where they want to be, so that everyone is on the same page to move towards the same direction, to move towards the same point, in the hopes, not in the hopes, but with the objective of achieving whatever new goal or strategy that they want to implement, and moving towards not just moving in a strategic way from a strategic standpoint, but also moving in a cultural standpoint. So this is the original design of the grid. However, over the years, our research has also identified two different styles that exist in the market and industries. One is a paternalistic or maternalistic way of working, where we prescribe and guide. Productivity is expected. Loyalty and compliance are rewarded. So me as a paternalist individual, it's akin to how we manage our family juga. So you hear organizations, we are a family, etc. So yes, there's some truth in it. And more senior people puts themselves as a father figure, mother figure, a kaka, or an abang as well. And I want you to achieve the results, but I want you to do it my way. I'm not aggressive and outright to you. I will convince you that my way is the best, and I expect you to follow my way. If you deviate, if you disagree with me, I will punish you. I won't punish you outright, but in a very silent way. I won't ask you for help anymore. I won't come to you for new projects. I will shove you aside. Kalau I keluar lunch with one or two other members, I won't bring you, I won't invite you along. A very quiet way of punishment. But if you follow me, I will be And if you're loyal to me, you will be rewarded. Now, the negative way the negative implication of this is that everyone is too dependent on the paternalist or maternalistic individual. So that's a negative impact on the organization. So if I'm a paternalist and I were to leave the organization is lost because they cannot, they don't know how to move without me because my beacon of light is not there. So you're not empowering the team because there's no empowerment involved because all of that falls on me. And we have had that as well in one particular organization where the CEO's nickname is Papa. So you can imagine how paternalistic the organization. And he actually resigned and brought in a new CEO because he's actually the owner of the organization, a big organization. He's the owner and he resigned and brought in a new CEO. But the new CEO found it very difficult because of the imprint this Papa has left on the organization. It benefits me because this gentleman, this Papa, called me up, told me what's happening because he still sits on the board, so he's non-executive. Called me up, someone linked me up with the CEO. So I talked to the CEO. CEO was telling me as well all these issues were. So of course, there's another engagement there to shift that organization's culture from a paternalistic way of working towards a different way. Right? And lastly is opportunistic. Opportunistic need the individual, organization, or team jumps around, whereby efforts are inconsistent and based on personal gain rather than organizational goals. So it becomes this is a very dangerous way of working because individuals and teams exploit and manipulate. And we have had organizations in the past who had opportunistic way of working because we do, a culture analysis of an organization before doing any engagement to understand where the organization is. And from the feedback we gathered from this opportunistic organization, people were stealing from the organization. Yeah, money, products, etc. So these are the 7 stars, really, of the GRID framework.
Okay, Faisal.
Yep.
There's a question in the chat box asking which one out of these actually are more common?
All right, thank you very much, Amelia. Good question. So in terms of which is very common to me that I see typically kat Malaysia, I would say typically is a lot of 5-5, 1-1, and 1-9. And in other parts of the world, Singapore, a lot of 9-1 and a lot of paternalistic. In Papua New Guinea, a lot of paternalistic because in Papua New Guinea, just to share with you, their culture is very clan-based. They have a very clan-based culture whereby each kampong has a ketua kampong, and the ketua kampong is very much put on a pedestal. And this, we can't deny that national culture influences the way we work. So whatever national culture that is very prominent in that particular country, we bring that as an individual into the organization where we work at. So that's what was happening in Papua New Guinea. In Indonesia, it's very similar to Malaysia, 5-5, 1-1, and 1-9 as well. Similar with Brunei. In Middle East, there's a lot of 5-5 and paternalistic because I did some work in Middle East with our partners there. In Germany, I did some work there as well, quite a bit of 9-1. You can imagine that 9-1, how aggressive Germans can get when they speak. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Amelia.
So having said that, right, I mean, all these combinations of I guess, we are talking about individuals, right? I mean, in terms of these 5-5, 1-1, 9-1, or the organization as a whole?
Individuals, teams, as well as an organization as a whole.
Okay. So if let's say, I mean, which combination is basically, that can be the formula for a team to be excellent in the end? For example, I mean, if you go 5-5, 1-1, 9-1, I mean 1-9, that seems to be more on the left side, middle range kind of, I guess, quadrant. So, yeah. So, in your opinion, how do you complement? I mean, how do you complement the different types of your team members in order to move towards excellence?
A very good question, Dahlia, in terms of the various individuals. So various individuals within a team will also influence how the team performs. Similarly, the majority of teams in an organization and how they behave, what norms they have will influence the organization's culture. And in terms of the best, or not, I don't like to use the word best, the soundest way of working, the soundest style, in terms from a behavioral standpoint, from a team standpoint, and from an organization standpoint. Me as a consultant or any great international consultant, really, whenever we engage, we never advocate a particular style to an organization or individual.
Faisal, I think
yeah.
there's a sound again.
Oh, ada lagi. Aku kick back too close. Is this better?
Not gone yet.
Not gone yet. Let me change my microphone.
Ah,
Is that better?
yep.
Okay, but can you hear me clearly, Dr. Dahlia?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so in terms of the when we engage with an organization, yeah, we don't advocate one is the best, because to bring about change in one's behavior, they have to arrive at that conclusion themselves. However, the tools that we have during our engagement allows to bring the people to look at what is the desired future culture or desired future behavior that they want to have within the team. And just to share with you, Dr. Dahlia, and the rest of the viewers and listeners, my years of experience and also the years of experience of some of my peers who have been with us for 30 plus years, every organization has always an individual, when the individuals choose the most desired style, they always gravitate towards 9-9. They gravitate towards 9-9. We're not saying that, 9-9, I'm not saying that 9-9 is the soundest. They themselves have said that 9-9 is the soundest. And we have seen successful organizations where they have paternalistic culture. But even going through the engagement with a successful organization to bring them to the next level, they still gravitate towards 9-9. So by virtue of that feedback and data collected on all the engagements we've done, resoundingly, semua cakap 9-9 is the soundest way of operating on, from a team, individual, and organizational standpoint, Dr. Dahlia. Okay.
Because I was just looking at when you explained the 9-9, right? So it seems to be, if not control, can be also a bit difficult to handle.
Yeah, if people do not, because the grid framework is like a language, which helps the organization speak that language. It's like a third language, because we all, more or less all of us are bilingual. So we're trilingual because we understand the grid framework. And it becomes easier because they identify perhaps that the organization or myself is 1-1, and I will tell you, Dahlia, I'm 1-1, I need your support. So along the months and years of implementation, you say, hey, Faisal, you're going back to your past practice, you're being quiet, you want to go to 9-9. You need to advocate more. So it becomes easy because we can talk about it. But if we don't have the framework, I'll be defensive. You are 9-9 and you're trying to give me an objective feedback without the framework, without the principles shared between us. I will say, hey, why are you being so rude? Blah, 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 and I play with you properly. Yeah. So this is what the grid framework really helps to bring that language into the organization, Dr. Dahlia.
All right.
All right. Okay, I'll move on. So how do we bring about a developmental process? So just a disclaimer for everyone listening. The culture intervention topic today really is for me to introduce to you, to bring light to you the importance of culture in an organization. By no means after this talk, things are going to change in UPM. No means. Because culture development and transformation, whatever you want to call it, requires investment, requires time, investment not just dollars and cents, but also in terms of the time and commitment from people within the organization. So what I'm going to share with you is a typical culture development process that we take with organizations. I mean, it is not set in stone. We do make adjustments along the way, even adjustments prior to engagement. We have to tailor make because of whatever makeup of the organization or whatever issues they're facing. But this is a typical process that we do. So before before we roll out the culture development, either on organization level, on a team level, we have what we know, what is the assessment and mobilization phase or stage. So mobilization and assessment stage, they are broken down into two major activities. You have a mobilization and what we call the culture audit. But I need to change culture audit too, because when organizations hear the word audit, oh, they get worried. So we might have to change it to culture analysis or survey, but the purpose I'll share across with you shortly. So mobilization, we need to get the buy-in from stakeholders. So what we mean by stakeholders is those that are involved in that particular culture development process. It could be starting with the management team first, or it could be starting with one particular division that needs strengthening in their culture. So those are the stakeholders. So we align their expectations and get their buy-in through orientation sessions to ensure that it doesn't become a shock or it doesn't translate negatively. Hey, why do I have to go for this training? Or why is my department going through this? Or straight away we become defensive. It starts off on the wrong foot. So that's where we look in the mobilization stage, and also then we look at the culture survey or culture audit, which is to understand the needs and assessment and organization environmental analysis leading to the identification of the existing organization culture or existing culture within the organization. So this is typically done through surveys and as well as interviews, one-on-one interviews with head of departments or management team members to get the helicopter view. But the organizational survey typically cuts across the organization from top right down to bottom, and we want to get more at the bottom to hear their feedback, because sometimes when we're sitting higher up in organizations, we don't see it. We don't see what's down below as well, because it gets filtered as the message goes up. So the culture survey is a very powerful tool to bring about that assessment objectively. And from there, the identification of the existing organizational culture is we use the grid framework plugged in there. Could be a 1-1 organization, 5-5 paternalistic, so on and so forth. So that's where these two typical activities come in at the assessment and mobilization phase. And then you have the second phase, which is the culture strategy and planning phase. So this is broken down into 3 main components. Firstly is defining the future culture, because culture is not owned by one individual or just a group of individuals in an organization. It is owned by all. Everyone contributes and attributes to molding or shaping the organization culture. So defining the future culture, individuals within the organization are selected to define the future, to define the culture that they desire to work in. So then we have the actual from the culture survey, and from the defining the future culture, we have where they want to be. And from this particular two activities, we can then see the culture gap. The culture gap and what needs to be done to bridge that gap and inch the actual culture closer towards the future culture. And this is done through team culture development, whereby we take intact work teams to develop steps to move the team towards the desired culture. So it is looking at the actual team as well, and what is the actual team's culture and how it differs from the desired future culture of the organization, and how can we move the team to be the unit of change in the organization towards what they had defined as a future culture state. of the organization. And intact work team, so meaning to say, for example, head of department with managers. So that's one intact work team. We don't take semua, one whole division, one shot, because it is we look at the reporting line and organization structures. And then as well as a third component is cross-team culture development. Cross-team culture development, cross-teams develop an embedding plan to support each team to achieve outcomes aligned with the organization's goals. So what this means is that we then take and identify certain teams that consistently work with one another. For example, perhaps the finance department has to always work with the internal audit department. So, however, those two teams never get along. Internal audit is always finding fault in the finance team. Finance team is always very secretive when the internal audit team comes in. So that relationship has been distorted. So we do take selected individuals from both departments, and sometimes it can be 3 departments as well. For example, perhaps HR and operations and IT, they have to work a lot together, but there's a lot of conflict back and forth, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where cross-team culture development as well comes into play, because those are also a different relationship altogether, not just within the team, but cross-team as well. So once that is done, and this is typically done through workshops, these 3 components, to ignite or start up the engine of teams to move from the current state to the future state, future culture state of the organization. We then come in to the 3rd phase, which is embedding and implementation, which is looking at 2 components: reinforcement of change and progress measurement. So it is not a typical come-in training, all right, great training, semua tepuk tangan, shake hand, I won't see you again. No. Whatever teams that have gone through from the culture and strategy planning stage, we meet them again, because to provide the support, to reinforce the change, and also to measure, has there been progress? If there hasn't been progress, why? So we have those tools as part of our repertoire to support the teams to measure, and that's where you look at reinforcement of change to support teams in implementing the new culture in their workplace through follow-up interventions and adoption of culture development tools. So we support the teams to consistently look at the team's culture. However, this is done through follow-up. Sometimes it's 3 weeks after the workshop, every 3 weeks for 3 months. We have one major one at the end of 3 months, kadang-kadang 6 months, depending on how stubborn certain individuals in the team could, or not stubborn, but how much difficulty the team is facing in moving their practices, norms, and standards forward. And ultimately, we want to ensure that the teams can adopt these tools independently without Grid International being on site. However, and we also measure and adjust on the spot to ensure shift happens towards the desired culture. So, measurement tools, we do have pulse check survey, 360 feedback developed, one-to-one feedback, team cultures, quite a few tools that we use to measure, has there been a shift from the actual team culture towards the future culture that has been defined across their journey, I would like to say, across the journey. And lastly is the last phase, which is sustainability phase, whereby we look at consolidating all these activities into the organization's efforts. So we link all related organization efforts towards the common culture. So this includes, a variety of tools. It's not set in stone, as I said. Nudging campaigns we've done, ongoing mini workshops to onboard newcomers. So, sometimes you have batches of newcomers coming in, at the executive level, the manager level. We compile them, and then we do a mini workshop, 1 day, 2 day, so that at least they are in the know of the grid framework, the ways of working, what critique means, how we look at resolving conflict, etc. Because the organization has invested so much, not just from a financial standpoint, but from a time and commitment standpoint. So newcomers coming in are also trained accordingly to onboard them. Setting up of candor rooms. This is interesting. This is something we did in Jordan for an particular organization there. They opened up a new head office, and the chairman, the CEO had asked us for our input as well, how the office looks from the future culture standpoint. And they wanted to set up one small room, what they coined it as candor room. And in this room, they have one-to-one meeting, either between peers or subordinate and superior, for 10 minutes only, twice a month. You know? And they have a logbook that they write. For example, Faisal and Dr. Dahlia, time 11 a.m. till 11:10 a.m. And it's just a very candid interchange of how I have been supporting you and how I feel you have been supporting me and how I feel you have not been supporting me, and vice versa as well. So that then we can have the quick change of how we feel with one another in terms of supporting one another, and to bring that awareness into our operational activity. So that was a very interesting initiative that the organization did. Other activities or areas that we have done is redoing the interviewing process as well. I've worked with that. The KPIs that are being established every month. For example, every month, usually we look at 100% operational KPI. Right? But there was one particular organization, the chairman himself had approved 50% operational, 50% behavioral, because he understood the importance of it and how behaviors, norms, standards, and culture attributes towards results, and he doesn't want that to go to waste. So that is embedded in the organization's process, and that's what we look at consolidation phase, the sustainability phase, which is the main activity is consolidating with all these mini efforts that they do to move the organization towards a common culture in a sustainable way. All right, so that's a great culture development process. I'm aware of the time, it's only 11:25. All right, so how has grit provided value? I know I've given quite a bit along the way, so perhaps I can touch a bit on just some selected cases here. So there was one cooperative bank here in Malaysia where culture development was a prerequisite to a rebranding exercise and expansion of products and services. So the start of this particular engagement was till today, I always laugh about it because I met the CEO, and the CEO asked me, called us in, nak jumpa semua. Okay. So during our conversation and discussion, he was talking about rebranding the bank. And this bank has been around for a long time. And they have rebranded 4 or 5 times. And they were looking into putting in more products and services and changing the logo, colors. And the CEO was very proud of it. He was showing me because he was part of the designing of the logos. He said, oh, Faisal, look at these logos. So I said to the CEO, I said, Dato', you rebrand however much color you want, but it is akin to putting a Ferrari body kit on a kancil. Engine tu sama je. Oh, he was so furious. He said, I know, Faisal, that's why I call you in. Oh, okay. So, and it's interesting when, because we started with the top management team, and while I was in the restroom, the COO was in there sneaking a cigarette away. We're doing a hotel, you're not supposed to smoke. We didn't think I start rokok in there. And then he straight away, Faisal, I want to talk to you, Bijak. I said, yeah, COO, I won't mention the name because I'm trying to keep it as confidential as possible. And so the COO said to me, me and my team have been slaving away to introduce new products and services to the branch, but results are still the same. And we have gone so far as to redesign the compensation benefit from a bonus standpoint, because branches were complaining that they had across the board bonus implemented. Tetapi with across the board, why do I have to work harder? Sama je bonus. See, that's mindset already, not realizing you work hard for salary, bonus too, an additional bonus, so it's called bonus. And he had gone around the branch, all around Malaysia. He himself went to give a talk about this, tapi nothing has changed. So I told him, okay, give me 3 branches, and I'll do my research and findings, and I'll get back to you. So I pergilah engagement semua, etc. And true enough, every branch that I visited, resoundingly, everyone was the branch was complacent. Irrespective, that bonus to depan mata. And I was doing a few other banks during that time, and I can tell you, their bonus structure was one of, if not the most lucrative in the industry in Malaysia. But still, they don't want to capitalize on that opportunity, because the bonus structure was that after 110%, any money brought to the branch, it is up to the branch how they would like to utilize that fund. Be it going away on holiday, kasih cash to the team members, bawa keluar dinner, or whatever, but still not able to. And although all this R1 involvement, rebranding, product services, they were even shifting their head office to that extent, shifting their head office geographically, because they thought that is what attributed to the declination of their profit and revenue. But of course, after our intervention, we found silos happening inside departments, and between head office and branch, there was very strong conflict. Branch felt that head office put themselves on a pedestal. Head office felt that branch works for them. And so any branches that, any calls coming in from head office, caller ID branch shows up on a branch telephone, they won't pick up. They'll try to avoid as much as possible until head office comes down to meet at the branch. And when head office is coming down, the branch will tidy it up, look nice, fill up the counters, nampak sibuk lah. And all those unsound, superficial ways of working really led to a decline in the results. So that's where we can see how, of course, culture, values, norms, standards, behaviors influences results, impacts results. And after our intervention from the top, we did all the branch members sampai ke Kerani, down to that level. They have tremendously improved their profits. In terms of branches, during that period, banks in Malaysia were closing down branches. They were opening up branches at a rate of 3 branches per year. Not a lot, but 3 branches a year. And I had recently met the CEO, new CEO, Baruni, at a mutual friend's wedding. And he told me, yeah, I'm very impressed with the culture in the bank that we're working in. And also how he was very impressed with the culture, and also how the branches were very open with one another, etc. So the sustainability of the culture. I did this engagement, I think, a good 10 years ago. That I did this. And their staff size, I found from the new CEO, has doubled since then as well. And that's what happened with that particular engagement as well. And then secondly, a shipping port here in Malaysia. So this particular shipping port, they had just established, how do I make it confidential? Okay, they had just established in one particular area. And this particular area had 2 other ports surrounding them as well. And they didn't know, they found it very difficult to differentiate itself from these competitors. And they're the new kids on the block. So how can we differentiate themselves? So one of the co-founders of this particular port went through the grid and was part of the grid transformation when he was working for Bosch in Germany. I think it was Bosch in Germany, right? So he came back to Malaysia, founded this port with a few other businessmen, and then remembered, why don't we do grid? Why don't we do culture? And this particular port, we started it in the 1990s. This was our first engagement to build up their culture in a sound, to build up a sound culture defined by them. And along the years, I think it took us about 2 to 3 years to do that total piece. And then every year they would send onboarding, new manager, new executives, etc., etc. And today, that pod, safe to say, is the leader in that particular vicinity. I had a few years ago, I met the CEO of one of its competitors, and the CEO did say, yes, we want to model our pod with that particular pod, although our pod has been around longer than that pod. So culture really was used by that organization or that pod to differentiate itself from its competitors. And when an organization is able to differentiate itself using culture, competitors are not allowed out, is unable to replicate. Think about it. Because katakanlah you try to differentiate by a cost differentiation standpoint. Next week, your competitors also bring down the price. Or you try to introduce a new product, next week, competitors introduce the same product. You rebrand, competitors will rebrand. So now, but when you differentiate on culture, how is a competitor going to differentiate itself? Using that same culture, cannot. Because how we work in one particular organization is different from another organization. So those are the two cases that I thought I'd share with you. And now I would like to pass the floor for any questions. And of course, if you would like to explore further how this can be implemented in UPM, because like I mentioned, after this talk, nothing is going to change culturally. It takes a lot more work, commitment, investment as well. So connect with me via LinkedIn or Instagram as well, because my emails are usually flooded and I don't want to miss that. And more resources, of course, are available on our website, greeninternational.com, which we have recently revitalized. And then, we have a podcast up there as well and a small YouTube channel. But yeah, that's the end of my sharing, and I'll stop sharing my screen as well. Thank you everyone for listening. Any questions, please?
Okay. Thank you, Faisal, for that, I guess, very interesting talk on culture. Yeah. And any questions from the floor? I have a question just now, but I seem to have forgotten about it. Because I was looking at, okay, it's very interesting that you are saying that, of course, culture has been said in the past as well as one of the most, it is one of the greatest competitive advantage a company can have, right? Because it takes time to nurture such culture. And once you hit it, you probably will be, for the years to come, you probably will be, good at that level with your culture. But my question is that, as time changes, as new things come in, like, we are previously, we are, being, we are facing the pandemic, for example, right? So the same culture may not work anymore. So what is your advice on companies' effort to revisit their culture? I mean, should they do that continuously, monitoring, or, I mean, what's your advice on that?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Dahlia. Yeah, I mean, realistically speaking, a sound culture will not typically cannot stand 100 years down the line. World powers, as well as we know, fall and new world powers rise, etc. So when we talk about culture first, so as I mentioned, culture is how we work. So what the grit values bring to the organization is those behavioral values and team dimensions and culture dimensions in terms of how we actionalize initiative, the critique, how are we accountable for our activities, and so on and so forth. And interesting question you asked, because it's interesting. It's about grit in Malaysia has been around for 42 years. And I had the privilege now of revisiting all those old people that went through semua, and even have friends in organizations who had that particular organization was a past client of ours, and listening to some of the activities that they do, for example, check-ins, they call it, from one of the organizations that my younger brother actually is working in. He said, oh yeah, because he went through a great training I put him in, and piggyback one of our clients. And he is able to assess that particular organization's activity, check-ins, for example, is the same fundamental value that he had learned during his time going through the grid training. So it is, but just termed differently, termed differently only. And even another organization, one of the big banks that we did here, one of my friends who's a manager there said, yeah, we are asked to do this every month, this one particular, and it's just, oh, okay, there's that linkage, although maybe that particular bank was done in the 90s, so over the years, but it changes. But it doesn't hurt to revisit and test balik the organization, which I have with one particular client in Singapore. Yeah. So in Singapore, this particular organization invested in the grid in early 2000. And during that period, and it's interesting because we have that data. In 2000, their culture was predominantly 9-1, And then they did the culture intervention, and then we did a post measurement, and the 9-1 level dropped because they wanted 9-9. And 9-9 raised up because people started behaving in that manner. Teams started having those 9-9 norms as well. So 9-9 went up. And then, okay, bye-bye. And then that particular organization had a new CEO brought in by specifically handpicked by the founder. And the founder handpicked him and brought him in. And then this is what the founder was having in a conversation with me. And he left the organization, didn't touch it at all, tak ambil tahu pun for 2 years. And in that 2 years, he found out that after that 2 years happened, he found out that that CEO was a racist, right? He was a racist, not talking to other races apart from his, sidelining them, and very authoritative, abuse of power, you name it, all those unsound values. And when he found out, immediately he terminated him, and he took back the reins of it. And he asked me to do another culture survey because he was so worried. How can this one individual with the team that he brought in bring about negative impact? And there was a negative impact. Yes, that particular organization's culture shifted from they chose 9-9 as the future culture. 9-9 value dropped, but I wouldn't say it dropped a lot. It dropped by about 10%, 20%. And that particular 10-20% went to, I think it was paternalistic and 9-1. Yeah. So it's interesting to see that decline because of leaders being able to really rock the organization. And similarly as well. And of course, after that, the CEO tanya, what can we do, Suma? So I jumped into it and looked at where to fix, which areas to fix. It's not the entire organization wide, but rather more specific and more precision interventions required there. So that was one particular organization from a CEO standpoint. Similarly, in another standpoint, where the resistance down below was so strong, that CEO turnover every year, new CEO, every year. So it's both ways. But yeah, I mean, revisiting in terms of just taking the culture reading agent and to understand, okay, this is our culture. Now, 3 years time, what another read after that was, okay, another reading. Are we sustaining? Are we improving? But during the implementation process, those readings are much more frequent to understand, to look at the movement of the teams too. But when we look at the organization sustainability, it is not as frequent, maybe after 3 years or 5 years, depending on the appetite of that particular organization, Dr. Dahlia.
Yeah, I guess I agree with you because in the past my experiences working in a multinational organization, for example, or writing a case study on a multinational organizations on cultural change, it shows that they do quite active, not really sometimes revisiting, sometimes reminders of what the culture is all about, so that people are not forgetting whatever they have started years back. So that is kind of that is very, very interesting, you know. I guess I'm not sure whether there are any questions. Wait. Yeah, okay. I guess I only have, you know, one last question, because I think a lot of people when attending a talk on culture, they see culture as always an organizational initiative. Okay, so that means, okay, I cannot do this because the organization has not started anything yet. The top management are not pursuing it. But I believe that you know, if you have your own team, if you have your own department, if you have your own sections, for example, I guess that is all still you know, there are still rooms for you to implement such a culture change or culture shift. I mean, do you kind of agree with that or disagree with that you know, understanding?
Well, thank you, Dr. Dahlia. Yeah, no, excellent articulation there. Because when you talk about, you know, culture change, I just want to pick up on that point. Yalah, buat apa nak ubah? Management tak mengarahkan, tak beritahu pun, you know. Or it's interesting because I was doing one survey earlier this year, and I was taken aback by the responses of that particular organization. Very strong against the management team. You know, there were, because there's a lot of old timers in the organization. So they've been through, you know, CEOs, CEO, or whatever, or have you, all the C-suites who come in and go to them. So they ada yang feedback tulis, final comments. Buat survey, buat apa? Nothing is going to change. Sebab management tak nak tukar. So I put that to the CEO. Say, what do you want to do about it? You know, what legacy do you want to leave behind? And he said, okay, let's continue. So I'm due actually next week to do defining future culture and implementing future culture for the management team as a starting point. What was interesting was the defining future culture was they picked a random, not the management team, they picked random around the organization, because a culture is owned or is molded by individuals within the organization. So when they picked and put through, they can complain also. Why do I have to go through this? Blah 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 blah. So just an interesting point to share with you there. You know, and it is looking at externalizing the issue. This is something that, you know, nothing to do with grit. I mean, this is something that I strongly believe in. Externalizing the issue. I don't doubt that there are always external factors influencing and impacting us, impacting our performance, effectiveness, efficiencies. But at the end of the day, as individuals within an organization, however high up or however low you are, because the grid we do, sampai, I pernah buat sampai driver, until security guard, ladies and gentlemen, I've done the grid, because those 99 values, the sound values that they have picked, you know, they see it as something that can really bring about change, not just in the organization, but their own lives. And when we always look up, okay, boss nak tukar, and then apa Dr. Dahlia nak tukar, Dr. Dahlia VC nak tukar, or whatever, you know, it becomes an inhibitor for us to change ourselves, because we can't change others. You know, your vice chancellor can't change anyone. Deans can't change it. It is, end of the day, it is the individual themselves must make the conscious effort to bring about the change. But unfortunately, sometimes we don't have the principles, instrumentations to bring about the change. You know, but nothing doesn't harm to go on Google to read up a bit. You know, doesn't hurt to bring about change within our own authority. That's important. Enact change within our own authority in areas which we are responsible and accountable for. So the higher up, yes, you have a bigger authority, you have much bigger responsibilities. But as we go down the organization, everyone still has authority, you know, informal or formal. You know, I've had encounters dengan I think it was a senior exec, assistant manager, who has been in that organization for 34 years. Habis grad, dia habis diploma, terus pergi organisation, tak gerak-gerak. and has never moved her desk or so. But she is very influential within the organization, informal authority there. And when she bought into the grid principle, yes, she shared it across, pushed people to enact in such a way, etc., etc. So most definitely, change doesn't have to. We don't have to wait to bring about change, because whatever individual change you bring to yourself, ladies and gentlemen, you know, it benefits you wherever you may go. You may not be with UPM forever. You may go to USM. But you may go to another organization, and that's where you bring that change along with you. You bring that value. I jumpa Tan Sri Amisham. I don't know if you know Tan Sri Amisham. He used to be a minister, Prime Minister's Department. He was a chairman of MIDA. So he was in Maybank as one of our. He was a big advocate of the grid. So Maybank we did in the 1990s during Tan Sri Ahmad Don's time. But the shift and the learning was so strong that, like I said, I had the privilege of meeting some of these people as a second generation partner. And I met him 20 years after implementation. I didn't ask anything, and he said, and the first thing he said, "Sampai hari ini, the biggest lesson I've learned from the grid, blah, 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 is how to provide critique to my team members, irrespective of whatever position I went through," because he internalized those values. You know, another individual that I met was a past participant. His name was Datuk Mak Hussein. That time he was a chairman of Gamuda when I met him. But he went through the grid in the late 80s, and he said, "Till today, I always look at conflict objectively. I don't take it personally. Look at it objectively, and I try to resolve it based on what is right with my team members, irrespective of where I go." And yeah, of course, it has benefited him as an individual, chairman, CEO, something, or whatever. So those values, yes, whatever level you're at, you can definitely bring about some sort of change in your organization or your team.
Thank you for saying that. All right, we have come towards the end of the session. I guess there are no questions so far. And as Cik Faizal mentioned, if you wanted to ask more questions or whatnot, you can actually link to him at LinkedIn.
Yeah, I do check that quite often, so do connect with me and message me there.
So feel free to connect with him. And I, on behalf of Center of Academic Development, I would like to thank you very much, Cik Faizal, for spending your time here and sharing your thoughts with us. So and for the rest of you, please don't forget to fill in your attendance if you want your certificates. And thank you also for joining us today. And have a good day. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum, everyone.
Australia.
Thank you, Azri. Hai, Dr. Su. Nampak?
Tak ada kamera, phone rosak. Bye.
Bye, see you around.
Bye, Doctor.
Bye, Siti. Prof.
Bawah
Siti.
ni, Doctor.
Nak pergi bengkel. Okay, bye. Thanks, Yasmin. Thanks, Azri.